What's going on, everyone? My name is Chris Chan, and today we are going to talk about calculating transportation costs. How do you go about doing that? How much does one vehicle cost you to run per month? And you may not have thought about some of these costs before, because it's not just that monthly payment or the insurance. There's a lot more that goes into it, especially when you're transporting people and you want to make sure that you're doing the right maintenance. So that being said, guys, this one is deep. Get your pens out, your paper out, get 2 pieces of paper, because we're gonna go through it. We're gonna get a little complex into the math equations, go back into a little calculus. I mean, it's probably not calculus, but we're gonna go back to those calculus days. Remember those days? Yeah, so, but before we do, just like, comment, subscribe. Come on now, show some love. Because I probably spent what, Dre, like 10 minutes writing all this stuff on here? And then like another probably 20, 30 minutes doing all the math behind the scenes to give you the digestible version. So do me a favor, if you find this information helpful, just let me know, because it's gonna keep me going. All right, guys, let's get into it. So the cost of transportation. In this example here, we're breaking down the cost of one vehicle, which has a total cost of $1,520 per month. So if you're gonna provide transportation, it's gonna be important to understand the additional expense that you're gonna be incurring by adding that transportation as a service to your adult daycare center. So that being said, you're gonna wanna understand what are my fixed costs and what are my variable costs, and we're gonna break this down here a little bit. So that being said, if you're leasing or you're purchasing the vehicle, you're either gonna have a loan or you're gonna have a lease payment. One thing to keep in mind is if you have a loan, you're not able to write off that entire payment as an expense. You're only gonna be writing off the interest as an expense. So if you have a lease, you're gonna be able to write off the entire vehicle as an expense, right? Now, another thing to take into consideration is your insurance costs. And when you're transporting people, even though you're not a transportation company, your insurance costs for transporting people in a commercial vehicle where other people are, that are employed by you are transporting them is going to cost a little bit more. So you'll wanna make sure you do your due diligence and your research behind that. So in these two examples here, we have the fixed cost of either purchasing or leasing a vehicle at $700 a month, and we have the insurance costs of about $350 a month per vehicle, and that might change depending on how many vehicles you have and the type and size of vehicles you have. Now, $700 a month is a range. You might have a transportation, van that holds, 7, 8, 9, 10 people with wheelchair lift. That payment might be closer to $1,000 a month, depending on how much you put down or how much you borrow or what your credit score is like. You might lease a Kia Sedona or something like that, and you might have a payment of $400 a month or whatever. So this is just a range. I'm just giving you a range, but the actual vehicle itself, whether you purchase new or used or whatever the case might be, is gonna be different, right? When it comes to the variable cost, this is the part that, everything I've calculated here, this is the part, okay, break out that pen, the paper, get ready, because this is some important math. But things that we gotta talk about are how often or how much transportation are you doing per month? How many miles a month are you putting on that vehicle? And that's really the best way to calculate what your costs are going to be. So when it comes down to trying to figure out what is my average monthly cost of having this vehicle, come up with that, miles per month. What does that look like? So in this example here, I'm going with about 1,500 miles a month. This is kind of similar to what we might do. So we have gas, we have maintenance, we have wash and detail. What do those look like? Okay, so when it comes to fuel, right? This is obviously always changing, especially with the price of gas. I mean, I've seen our fuel bill be as little as $100 a month per vehicle, or about $70, $80 a month per vehicle, and as high as $300 like it is now. And so in a case like this, you're gonna, what is the average miles per gallon that your vehicle that you have gets? Is it a massive transportation van that gets 8 miles to the gallon? That's gonna affect this rate. Is it a Kia Sedona? Is it a hybrid? Does it get 20, 30, 45 miles to the gallon? That is all going to affect everything we're talking about here. But you're looking at, okay, 1,500 miles per month. If I divide that by 20 miles per gallon, I'm gonna actually get 75 gallons per month is what we use. Now I can take that number and I can times it by $4 per gallon and come up with an actual figure of $300 a month. So if I'm going 1,500 miles every month, I'm gonna spend probably around $300 a month in fuel. Does that make sense? So I took the average miles per month I'm going, divided by the actual mile per gallon my vehicle gets. Now I know how many gallons per month I'm using, times that by the gallons, or whatever the going rate is for a gallon of gas. That's gonna give you that average monthly cost of fuel. Now, maintenance, we have oil changes, we got transmission, we got brakes, we got tire rotation, we got tire replacement. And if you're transporting people, you don't want to skimp on this stuff. All right, your car, you might go beyond the, allotted time. You may not rotate your tires. They might be like, hey, do you want to change your air freshener? And like they pull that nasty gunky AC filter from the back, and you're like, this is your air filter, you want to change it? I'm not really worried about that one as much, but I am going to be worried about, okay, brakes are important, tire rotation's important, tire replacement's important, especially when you're transporting people, and of course oil changes, all that stuff. You want to minimize your breakdowns. You want to make sure your vehicles are in good shape. So when it comes to oil changes, so say I'm going with a synthetic blend to reduce the amount of oil changes that I'm doing. So maybe 120 bucks an oil change, goes about 5,000 miles, maybe it goes 10, maybe, you figure out whatever you decide to do in your area. I'm just trying to give you the idea. What you're trying to figure out is, what is my cost per mile? Because if I can figure out my cost per mile, that'll help me understand how much it costs per month. So my cost per mile would be whatever the cost of the item is divided by however many miles you're allotted for every oil change. So if it's 5,000 miles for every oil change and it's 120 bucks an oil change, then it's 120 divided by 5,000. That's gonna give me about 2.4 cents per mile. So 2.4 cents per mile. I know it sounds like nothing, right? All of these are all like pennies, okay? It's all pennies. But when you add it up over all these miles, it turns into actual dollars. Go figure, right? So if you have maybe your transmission, you replace that fluid every 40,000 miles at 250 bucks. That's I guess that's a half a penny essentially. You got brakes, you might be spending $300 for front brakes, $300 for back brakes. If you had to do both, it's 600 bucks. Over 40,000 miles, you're gonna be spending close to a penny and a half. If you got tire rotation, maybe you bring that in every time you get an oil change or every other time you get an oil change. And so that's maybe 100 bucks for every 10,000 miles. That you're gonna be spending about a penny. And again, tire replacement, maybe 250 bucks a tire, again, depending on your vehicle, but you might replace those every 40, 50, 60,000 miles, just being conservative here. In this case, we're talking about basically 2.5 pennies every mile. So now that I've broken it down into the cost per mile, I can easily figure out what my monthly average cost of my maintenance items are gonna be, even if I don't do these every month. I'm just trying to give myself an idea of okay, what is my monthly average? You might have some months where you have maintenance and it's more heavy that month and it's less than the other months, but this is just kind of coming up with what should I expect to plan for on a monthly basis. So take my cost per mile, and I got 1,500 miles per month, and now I can figure out what my monthly costs are. And the cool part is if you put all that stuff into an Excel spreadsheet, you could adjust this depending on where you're at, and you might be able to adjust these things depending on what the costs are and how often you get them done. And then you could kind of use this as a moving target depending on the type of environment or how often you use transportation at your adult daycare center. But monthly variable cost for maintenance, I'm projecting about 470 bucks a month. Now that does include the gas, I should say. So it's probably That's about $170 per month for maintenance related items that I should be setting aside, about another $300 per month for fuel. And so now I get a total of $1,520 per month to operate just one vehicle. Now, if you got 3 vehicles, times that by 3. Or if you have one vehicle that just doesn't cost as much to maintain, because it's a Kia Sedona, it's a little minivan versus a massive transit van that maybe has more expensive things to maintain. Obviously, these expenses will change. But as a rule of thumb, in this case here, $1,500 per vehicle is kind of what my average nut is to cover. Now, one thing we didn't talk about is the cost of the driver, right? Because this ain't a Tesla, okay? It's not driving itself. And I don't know if you want to put your members in a Tesla and have that Tesla, like use autopilot to get them home. That may not be, we may not be there at that capability. We may be someday, but today we're still gonna use drivers. And so if you have a driver on staff, you're gonna have to figure out, well, what does it cost us to have that driver for that vehicle? And so how many hours per day are they working? How many days per month are they working? And how much are they getting paid per hour? And this will help you figure out what is that monthly cost to have that driver maintaining and operating that vehicle, right? Of course, these things might all be variable as well, but now this might be an additional expense on top of that one vehicle. So every month you might be spending on the transportation items between the fixed vehicle cost, the variable cost, and the cost of having a driver, somewhere close to $2,500 to $3,000 a month per vehicle. Now, are you able to cover those expenses by charging your members? And if so, how would you do that? So this is where, at least now, you have an idea of what that expense is, and it'll be easier for you to back out, like, okay, now I know what transportation costs are, and now I gotta go figure out, well, how many people can I transport in this period of time, and how much would I charge them, and would that be enough to cover my expenses in regards to transportation? So that would be a separate video for another time, because I know you filled up both of your pages of notes, which you guys are just such wonderful students. I'm so grateful. But there's just a lot to kind of figure out. So I think it's important to like start with this, identifying what the expenses are going to be, and now we can kind of then go over to the consumer side of it and figure out, well, how do I charge for transportation? What do I need to calculate to come up with a cost? At least now I'll have a place to work from where I'm like, I know I need to at least make on every vehicle $2,500 if I just want to cover the cost of the vehicle. If you want to like earn a profit on providing transportation, then you'd have to figure out what that number would be as well. And this would be something that like, we would have to calculate how many people are you transporting in that vehicle, how many trips are you making per day within the allotted amount of time, how many miles per month are you putting on your vehicle with all of that being said. So another video for another time, but thank you guys so much for joining me on this one. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, show some love. Go to adcpro.com if you want to learn about opening up your very own adult daycare. Of course, join us for our monthly webinars. Join us on our Facebook group, Adult Daycare Pro. You see it on adcpro.com. It's a Facebook group. We love to have you guys in there asking questions and just kind of participating and being a part of this amazing family. I think adult daycare is the future, and I would love for you to join me on this journey. Thank you guys so much. We'll see you on the next one. Now let's get back to work. Hey guys, thank you so much for joining me. If you'd like to learn how to open your own adult daycare center, go to adcpro.com. If you'd like the latest business tips, click here, and make sure you subscribe to our channel, click here. We'll see you guys next time.